AI isn't just transforming technology companies right now, it's quietly reshaping entire industries underneath the surface. But here's something strange happening in the market. Big AI companies get billions, while smaller ones are barely moving. This is where it gets interesting. Two AI economy companies trade under $2, one at 77 cents, another at $1.26. Are these small companies ignored or operating in overlooked layers of the AI economy that investors haven't fully noticed yet? Sometimes, the most interesting opportunities aren't in AI headlines. They sit quietly underneath the infrastructure. Global AI expansion accelerates rapidly. Data centers grow, AI models empower, automation spreads across healthcare to security. The catch: while attention focuses on AI leaders, supporting layers underneath receive far less attention. This is what most people miss. AI systems don't function on algorithms alone. They depend on massive structured data, infrastructure, and real-world deployment environments. Historically, pricing inefficiencies appear here. Institutions watch these layers, as the market sometimes takes longer to recognize supporting companies. This doesn't guarantee anything, but it explains why smaller companies operating inside the AI ecosystem remain on investor watch lists. Because this is exactly where smaller cap opportunities sometimes begin to form. Let's start with the first company. This business operates inside one of the most overlooked parts of the AI economy, the data infrastructure layer. Not the flashy side of AI, not the applications people interact with, but the underlying system that feeds AI models the information they rely on. And here's the catch. AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on. But in industries like healthcare, data is often fragmented across hospitals, research centers, and clinical systems. And this is where things start to get interesting. This company focuses on organizing and providing access to massive healthcare imaging datasets, the kind that researchers and AI systems use to develop diagnostics and medical insights. In other words, it sits right at the intersection between medical data and artificial intelligence. And this is the part most people miss. If AI adoption continues expanding inside healthcare, the demand for structured medical data could increase dramatically. Because without reliable data pipelines, AI tools simply can't function effectively. So if this layer grows, companies operating in this space could quietly become critical parts of the infrastructure. Now let's talk about the stock movement. This company previously traded at higher levels, experienced momentum, and then pulled back significantly. Since then, the price has settled into a lower range, currently sitting around 77 cents. So the question investors naturally start asking is this simply a company in decline? Or is it a stock that hasn't yet reflected its role in the broader AI ecosystem? Because sometimes pullbacks happen not because a company disappears, but because market attention shifts elsewhere. Now, the company's business model centers around building large networks of healthcare imaging data, connecting providers, researchers, and AI developers. And this is where things shift. Because when you actually look at the company behind this idea, the stock we're talking about is OneMedNet Corp, trading under the ticker ONMD, currently priced around $0.77. But here's the catch. This doesn't mean the stock moves tomorrow. There are risks here, adoption speed matters, and execution always plays a major role. Timing is also a huge factor. But the reason companies like this appear on investor radars is because they operate in layers where pricing inefficiencies sometimes exist. Now, before we get into the second company, here's something many investors overlook. Even though AI adoption is accelerating globally, not every part of the AI ecosystem reacts at the same speed. Sometimes the companies building infrastructure move later, long after the initial excitement around AI headlines. And this is where things get interesting again, because the second company operates in a completely different part of the AI economy. Unlike the first company, this next company sits much closer to real-world deployment. And this is where the contrast becomes important. Instead of providing the data layer behind AI systems, this company uses advanced technology to interact directly with human health and neurological activity. But here's the catch. The healthcare sector is beginning to experiment with technologies that combine neuroscience with machine learning and digital systems. And this is the part most people miss. Some treatments for neurological conditions are moving beyond traditional medication toward advanced medical devices that stimulate specific areas of the brain. And this is where things start getting interesting. This company develops neurostimulation technologies used to treat conditions like depression through targeted brain stimulation therapies. Now, if innovation continues expanding in healthcare technology, companies building advanced neurotech systems could become increasingly relevant. Because healthcare is one of the industries where AI, neuroscience, and technology are beginning to overlap. But again, the stock price hasn't fully reflected that narrative. Looking at the movement pattern, this stock has traded significantly higher in the past before experiencing a prolonged decline and eventually stabilizing near its current range. Right now, it's sitting around $1.26. So again, the question investors ask becomes familiar. Is this a struggling company, or is it a company waiting for renewed attention as healthcare technology evolves? Because in small-cap markets, perception and timing often move prices just as much as fundamentals. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because when you actually look at the company behind this technology, the stock is Neuronetics Inc., trading under the ticker STIM, currently priced around $1.26. But again, it's important to keep expectations realistic. This doesn't guarantee future performance. There are real risks here: competition, financial pressure, and the uncertainty that always comes with emerging healthcare technology companies. So now you have two completely different types of companies operating within the broader AI and technology landscape. One is embedded deep inside the healthcare data infrastructure layer, potentially benefiting from the growth of AI-driven medical analysis. The other sits much closer to real-world neurological treatment technologies, combining advanced devices with modern medical innovation. And this creates an interesting comparison. One company focuses on the data pipelines feeding AI systems. The other focuses on technology interacting directly with human health. So the question becomes, if AI adoption continues expanding, which type of company benefits faster? Does the infrastructure layer gain recognition first, or does visible technology capture market attention sooner? Because historically, infrastructure plays sometimes move later, but when recognition arrives, they can move quickly. And this is where things get interesting again. Because investors aren't just comparing two companies, they're comparing two different layers of the same technological transformation. The bigger takeaway here isn't simply about these two stocks. It's about understanding how the AI economy actually works. Most of the headlines focus on the obvious leaders, the companies building AI models or dominating tech headlines. But underneath that layer, there's an entire ecosystem quietly developing: data pipelines, healthcare technology, automation systems, infrastructure. And historically, these supporting layers are where the market sometimes discovers new opportunities later in the cycle. Again, none of this guarantees success, but it explains why smaller companies operating in these spaces continue attracting attention from investors looking deeper into the AI economy. Because this is the layer that often moves later, but sometimes more aggressively once recognition arrives. If this breakdown helped you see the AI market from a different angle, that's exactly the goal. And if you want more deep dives into emerging AI companies and small-cap opportunities, Make sure you stay tuned for the next analysis.